Hi everyone, this is Heather. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I've got a card tutorial for you and we're going to be making a really pretty friendship card. It's got this sweet bird sitting on a branch with some leaves and flowers, and it says we're the best of friends. I'm using the lovely new Free as a Bird stamp set from Stampin Up. I think this is a really pretty set. It's got the individual birds on a branch, some leaves, different flowers, and some really great sentiments. And I'm also going to be using some stitched rectangle dies from Stampin Up. So I have a piece of mint macaroon cardstock, 8.5 by 11, just cut, scored, folded in half for my base. And then I have this really pretty script word, and this is from the 6x6 Designer Series papers. It has like a pretty pattern on the back, but I'm using the side that has like the scripty words. Just a little strip of pink to go behind my sentiment, and then also some watercolor paper. The main piece that we're working on today, I've cut to 5 1/4 by 4, but we are going to cut it down with the die. So in the end, it's going to end up measuring 5 by 3.5. So I want to show you today how you can watercolor with your ink pads. I'm just using classic Stampin' pads from Stampin' Up. These are dye-based inks. As you can see on the background here, I've stamped my leaves and my flowers in colored ink, and then I've stamped the bird in black just to make it really kind of stand out away from the background. So because these are dye-based inks, they react a little bit with water, so you can sort of use them as watercolors. So I've taken my pencil and just made a little tick mark at the bottom of my watercolor panel just to kind of give me an idea of where the center is. So I'm going to use the mint macaron and I'm going to stamp out my leaves. I'm going to stamp one to the left and one the opposite to the right. And then add an additional one on either side. I have a number 3 paintbrush and a little cup of water. You could also use an aqua brush if you would like. And you'll see if you want just a really light wash of color, you can kind of blend and smear that ink in just a little bit. But I want a little bit more color than that, so I'm just going to take the tip of my paintbrush and just touch it to that ink pad and pick up a little bit of color and add that inside my leaves. So I have this really nice soft watercolor look. Now if you want to have it lighter, you can add more water. If you want it darker, don't add so much water. So you can actually get quite a bit of shading out of just one ink pad color. So you just continue to pick up a little bit of water, pick up some color from the ink pad, and just to continue to fill those in. So I'm just going to fill in all my leaves and add a little bit of dark shading on each one. So I've kept it very loose, very simple, not too detailed. I'm going to clean my brush off, make sure all that green color is gone. And now moving on to a So Saffron ink pad, and I want to add just a little bit of yellow just to give my leaves a little bit more of a realistic look. So just here and there, I'm just going to add little touches of yellow. With my leaves finished, I'm moving on to one of the smaller flowers, and I'm using Blushing Bride ink. And I'm just going to add a few little flowers in amongst the leaves, trying not to overlap too much. Make sure that my brush is clean. I'm going to pick up some of that ink and do the same thing. I'm just going to fill in all these little flowers, having them be a little bit darker in the center. With my flowers finished, I'm going to set this off to the side for a second, and I'm going to move on to a separate sheet. These are the pieces that I'm going to be cutting out, and I'm going to go to the larger flower. I'm going to stamp 3 of those out, again with the Blushing Bride. I'm going to watercolor those exactly the same way. To stamp out my bird in black, I'm using StazOn because I don't want the lines of this stamp to blur. With that stamped out, I'm going to go back to my Blushing Bride and I'm going to add color to the top part of my bird, having it be a little bit darker, kind of under the wings, under the base of the tail. And just add a little bit of shading and shadowing with a little bit less water on my brush. Again, really loose, really easy. This is not a technique to stress about. With the Blushing Bride done, I'm going to clean off my brush and go back to the So Saffron and pick up a little bit of that for the feet and beak of my little bird. And I've got a small Stampin' Spot with Tip Top Taupe, my brush cleaned out. I'm going to pick up some of that just for the belly of my bird, just to give it a little bit of color and it's not stark white. So I'm finished with all my watercoloring, and there's not a die set for this stamp set, so I'm just going to use my scissors. I'm going to cut out my 3 flowers and my bird, leaving just a little bit of white space around them. I accidentally didn't record this next section, but what I did was take my Blushing Bride ink pad and smeared on top of a clear stamping block, used a large wet paintbrush to pick up some of that color and splatter it onto my background. For my sentiment, I'm going back to the black StazOn ink, another little piece of the watercolor paper. I'm going to stamp out the words, "We're the best of friends." Using some repositionable tape, I'm going to tape the skinny stitched rectangle in place, and I'm going to run that through my die cut machine. I'm also going to do the same thing with my watercolored panel with a stitched rectangle die that measures 5 by 3.5. I hope you can see how it added that nice pretty stitched texture. So I'm ready to assemble my card. I'm just going to use tape runner on the back of my watercolor panel and apply that to my pattern paper. Then I'm going to apply this to my card base. I'm going to add some tape runner to the back of my words and adhere that to my little strip of pink, which has been cut to 2 3/4 by 3/4. On the back of my 3 flowers and my bird, I've added some foam squares. So I'm going to place the bird in the center of the leaves. Add 1 flower off to the left, 1 off to the right, and then add 1 more up in the upper left-hand corner. I've applied some tape runner to the back of my words, and I'm just going to kind of slip that under that flower up there. And here is our finished card. I think this is a really pretty card to send to a friend. It's a really great way to watercolor. You don't have to have watercolors. You can actually use your colored ink pads because they are dye based. They will react with the water and give you a nice, pretty soft, easy watercolor look. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Be sure to check out my channel. I have lots of other card tutorials and product reviews for you. Please think about subscribing, and I hope you have a really wonderful day. This is Heather. Bye.